I'll be giving my miniature clay canvases to 3 local artists and seeing what they do with them. I'm a polymer clay artist who makes these tiny paintings that you can wear as jewelry. I live in New York City, surrounded by so much art and creativity, so this month I reached out to a few artists to see what we can create together. I purposely tried to find artists whose work differed a lot from mine, so we have a chance to see a variety of art. I'll be sculpting the base and frame with polymer clay and dropping them off to each artist to paint on them. I've asked everyone to use acrylic paint as it works best for the material, but otherwise they have total creative liberty. I think this is a great way to see what other artists are doing in the area and create something fresh. And everything made in this video will be one-of-a-kind special edition pieces that you'll have a chance to purchase in my shop. First up is Ryla. She's an Australian artist living in Manhattan, and I made her a pair of oval frames that will be turned into earrings. I already dropped these off to her a few weeks ago, so I'll be meeting her in her Tribeca studio to see her art and pick up the earrings today.
So I've kind of always been into art from a kid all the way through school. I just never really perceived it as something to make a career out of, but it's always been in me. When I moved from Perth to Melbourne, I bought more paints and stuff to just be creative. I just needed an outlet, and this is actually a really old painting that I painted back in my sketchbook, I guess. And I was in my 20s, so I was living in Melbourne, but it was just something I just wanted to create. It's a super simple octopus. I look at it now and I'm like, this is trash art. Yeah, it's fascinating to just see where you came from to where you're going now. So yeah, it's very cool. I would describe my work as very vibrant and colorful, first and foremost. But I like to create art that, for one, allows the viewer to see something interesting for themselves in it. So I'm just trying to make sure that any piece that I create has some kind of element in it that's fun. Yeah, it just really brings a childlike whimsy and a nostalgia to the viewer. I want them to feel happy. A lot of my pieces glow in the dark. So it's sort of 2 pieces, one during the day and one at nighttime. And a lot of that inspiration was from the glow-in-the-dark stars that we used to stick on our ceiling as kids. At nighttime, it's a whole other painting, and you get to actually experience a painting when the lights are off. Everything is an inspiration. I live in New York City, walking out the door is an inspiration, and everything has feeling and emotion, and it's just nice to be present.
So what was your idea and thought process for this collab?
Ooh, this was tricky because obviously, as I mentioned to you, I've been really obsessed with Hello Kitty lately, but she's heavily trademarked and copywritten. I could do a female figure because for me, that's one of the first things that comes to my mind when I'm going to paint. It's usually a woman because we are beautiful, let's be real. And as you can see from my sketches, there are some figures in there. But then I was looking at your work and I was like, that's very similar to what you do, and I didn't want it to just be the same but in my colors and my style. So I was like, well, what else could I do? And very much my other style is a little bit more cartoon-ish. I don't know if you've seen the movie Spring Breakers. It's such a vibe, bright colors, hot girls in bikinis and ski masks. I don't know why, but I just love that. Yeah, I also have a stack of Playboys over there just hanging out. So yeah, very much my vibe. So that was kind of what inspired me. And then I was like, well, I just don't really want to do something cutesy. Mickey Mouse is no longer trademarked. That has ended. So decided to just pop some Mickey Mouse ears on it. I was like, yeah, why not? And yeah, I like to make the background trippy, and I wanted to use my current 2 favorite colors. Even though I'm wearing black today, I also added some extra drips to them. All of my artwork ends up having some sort of drippiness to it. I made sure she had lashes to the gods. That's what every baddie needs. I was like, let's throw a spanner in this and make it quirky and really, really fun and bold. I never thought I would paint something so small. I use nail art brushes.
So as a YouTuber, it's really important to have a good thumbnail. You need to catch people's attention, but also inform them of what the video is about. So I use Kiddle, who's the sponsor of this video, for a quick and easy way to design my own. I usually start off by taking a few photos of myself, and on the Kiddle website, I'll make a new project and set the dimensions to 1280 by 720. And then I'm gonna upload my picture and some screenshots of my video. It has all the standard sizing and cropping tools, but what's especially useful is this AI background remover that I can use to cut myself out, and now I can just layer myself on top of any other picture or background. They even have a blurring tool that's pretty useful to create depth. Kindle is super efficient because it's sort of a hybrid between Illustrator and Photoshop, so instead of having to go back and forth between both programs, you have everything in one place where everything is super simplified, so it's very easy to use. I also love that they have such a variety of built-in fonts and so many ways to customize them. I made mine look like neon signs, and I really like these bubble letters. So here's the final result. If you want to make your own cool thumbnails, try Kindle for free by using the link in my description. Next, we've got Jojo, who's an art student at Pratt. I actually had this frame left over that I never got to finish, so I'm gonna give this one to him. He was actually showing at a local gallery in Williamsburg, and I thought his work was so quirky and different, so I asked him to be a part of this project.
My mom always said that she thought I was an artist, and she started saving my work since I was a little kid. I started drawing cartoon characters, I guess, when I was probably around 10 years old, but I remember I always had a sketchbook when I was little, even before that. In middle school and high school, I started to take it serious. I remember like in 7th grade, I wanted to go to art college. I remember I always liked to draw like what I saw on the screen. I didn't have like my own style yet, but I was learning how to draw. Like I kind of liked cartoon stuff, so you can kind of see it's kind of cartoony. I'll say music wise, I like Nicki Minaj, I like Eniko, I like Ethel Cain. Art wise, I like Kehinde Wiley, Takashi Murakami. There's this artist named Vex. I kind of gravitated towards his style of like bunching a lot of things together instead of trying to make a composition. So I really see that like coming through in my work a lot. So I'll say he definitely was an inspiration. I'm also like inspired by nature and like fantasy, the fantasy world. Like I always like to think that I could be an alien in outer space. I think the other day I'm realizing too, like my art is very heavily inspired by like the Grateful Dead, because my dad, he took me to 11 concerts. There's always so much color and vibrancy like on the screens, and then the t-shirts that they sell, I would always come home with like a very colorful t-shirt. Multicultural, so like Japanese, German, and Venezuelan, and so I will see like color everywhere. So I don't really have a thought process when it comes to this style of art, like not trying to be perfect. I draw like cartoons, and I like to draw a lot of eyes. I'll just like have an empty piece of paper and I just start drawing like little kid stuff, like a heart or a butterfly or an eye. I've learned to not think about it and just do what feels good and feels right. I just go into the piece and see what happens. And when I look at eyes, it's kind of like, it feels like it's alive, something familiar, something powerful. The eyes are the window to the soul. That's how we connect to each other.
This last pair is going to Steve, also known as the Greenpoint artist. I first saw a video on Instagram about his mini hunts and followed him ever since. He hides tiny original paintings around the neighborhood, and I've been hoping to participate sometime to find one myself. And since he's already familiar with small canvases, he seemed perfect to work on these earrings. I'm headed to his studio in Greenpoint now to see what he came up with. Tell me about your mini painting hunts.
What made me think of it was I love all the graffiti and street art and just all the stickers, even just everything that people put all over the place in New York. Some of my favorite stuff like that, these ones that weren't big, where you had to notice it. In fact, the one that really inspired me was someone does these little miniature dollhouse doors. They put it on the ground, like up against the building, and it's like a fancy door, and it looks like a mouse house. And so that's the kind of thing that I wanted to make, was something that you wouldn't see if you were just doing your thing, but if you looked, it would be like talking right to you. So all of that said, I really wanted to like just start putting up my regular paintings. But it didn't occur to me, even though those are miniature, to do miniature. First I was like, oh, I'm gonna hang my paintings outside. And just, and my wife's like, well, people just take it right away, right? And so I was like, yeah, you're right. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll nail them into the wood, or I had all these other ideas. But eventually I started thinking, like, if I want to give them away, they should be as small as possible. And then once I remembered these little canvases from like art supply store, I was like, well, if I can paint on those, then they would be hidden. Like, because they're so little, I just place them in places where people don't really pay attention. It was also an idea of like, how could I get to know people in the neighborhood? When you do something like the earrings, or even me with the miniatures, let's say, it's like, it just removes a lot of what stops people from engaging with fine art. I don't think it takes away from art at all, that it makes more people able to enjoy it. 10 years ago, I'm painting a lot of my favorite areas and no one wanted them or cared. Part of it was committing to my neighborhood. Like, I am a landscape painter and I wanted to paint New York City. So I was painting the Empire State Building and like whatever in Manhattan. But then I realized it was like, no, it's your neighborhood. It's like for New York, everybody, it's their like 5 blocks, like, or their trip to work. And so then I started painting like those things, like the subway stops and like delis. I had this red deli that was this old one that used to be right there. And everyone thought it was like a different deli from like their area or neighborhood because it looked so sort of general. 10 years ago, me and my wife, we just started working together. And she was selling my graphic design work. She had the idea of like, well, we do this uniquely enough, I think, that like I could teach people how to do it and we could like sell that. Now she runs it with her own people and like that. So I'm out of it. But the crazy part was like I had my whole life been scraping to get by. And then finally it was like, Steve, you can just do art all the time now. I was just so used to always hustling and like always having a deadline. I miss that motivation. Actually, I know it sounds crazy. So at first I enjoyed it. I just kind of like chilled, not like hustles as much because I had just been doing that forever. And you know how it feels. You're just always sort of like trying to get somewhere constantly. And I have ADHD too, so I feel like that anyway, just of like, when is this gonna end or be there kind of thing. So I had to get used to that. So all of a sudden, when I had all the time in the world, it wasn't like freeing. It was like, oh no, like, you know, like I have all this time and I'm not using it. I felt all this pressure and stuff. But I think what it's done now is opened up space for me to do what I'm saying I want to do anyway with my work, is sort of like let it dissolve some more and get more abstract, which was very hard to get away with when there are people buying and commissions and deadlines when they want this building and that building. Like I said, I still want to always do it and never get away from keeping that. A lot of this stuff just looks beautiful, even if it's, you know, dirty.